The Continental Divide, Chapter 4, Shadows and a Step Back in Time. So, she's a soul trapped inside of a shadow demon? Emily asked as she gazed out the massive back window in the ground facility. That poor girl. Her fate was worse than mine. At least I still have my body. She looked down at her clawed feet and wrapped her tail around her legs. I have to make things right, or it'll only get worse, Wolfram said as he finished rolling his cigarette and lit it. He took a heavy drag and handed it to Kyron, who then took it himself. Carmen needs help. We have to free her from the shadow. Somehow, anyway, to get her back into her body and shut out the more intelligent shadows, so that they may never have access to any other worlds outside of the in-between ever again. Things will only get worse if we don't fix this. Kyron took a hit and blew it out slowly as he looked up at the clouds collecting above them. We saved her, but did we learn anything while we were down there, though? Anything that we could use to better understand what we need to do next? Well, son, I'm not sure. That's what I was hoping to discuss after our meal. We saw what you called holograms. You say those are essentially technology echoes from the past? Can you recall anything from them? Kyron thought back to pressing the button and seeing what appeared to be mayhem in the underground facility room. He never saw Emily, however, normal or not, as they all wore the same type of suit. Emily, Savior, you said he wore a lab coat, right? Yeah, why? I saw a recording played with holograms of a bunch of them in a room as something catastrophic happened. So I guess Savior was the last survivor and basically went crazy? That doesn't excuse what he did to me. No, not at all, but what I'm saying is, there were a bunch of them at one point working on something. What was it that you heard, Lucas? From what I can recall, it was something about a disease of infertility, and they were trying to clone bodies to keep transferring the souls into in order to keep working on a cure for it, so humanity wouldn't cease. But it seemed it had a long time ago, like ancient times, but their technology was far more advanced than we or this world has achieved yet. So it lasted all these years. That's all I can remember. Sorry. So a disease that caused infertility. Cloning, transferring souls. Wait! That soul bank! We have to go back! Kyron shouted wide-eyed at Wolfram. That might be our answer. You think Savior is somebody, or somebody did something wrong and that's how the intelligent shadow came to be? Wolfram furrowed his brow and scratched his chin. It's possible. Even if we find a way back down there, we can't take Emily, unfortunately. The whole system would freak out again. That's true. We need Lucas to listen as well. He has to go. Emily, will you be all right by yourself? She had curled up in the corner nearest to the window as she lifted her head from the floor. I will. I'm just happy to be out of that chamber. I'll remain here until you return. All right. You're welcome to any food here. We will return soon. If we are not back within a day, you may flee from here. She nodded, then laid her head back down and curled up again. Kyron said as he approached the door. The door slid open despite his concerns, being it remaining locked due to not being able to locate Emily. We need to be cautious just in case something else was down here that was alerted of our presence yesterday. Right. The men descended the stairs once again and arrived in the first section where the AI was located. The door that had been hidden before was shut. Soul Chamber. Accessing Soul Chamber. Please stand by while your request is processed. The door slid open, revealing the room, filling with many scientific knickknacks. What do you say we watch the hologram again? It might give us a clue since we're not all shocked this time around. Where'd you find that button again? Oh, right up there. Kyron went up the staircase and across where the large button was. Lucas remained down below. Ready? Wolfram and Lucas gave a thumbs up. Kyron pressed the button and leaned on the railing as the green hologram appeared just as before. It fell to its knees and held the sides of its head and cried out in a foreign language. "There!" Lucas shouted. He pointed in a direction where the two above could not see. Wolfram and Chiron descended the stairs quickly, but arrived right when the hologram blew into particles. "What was that?" "I don't know. Something moved quickly through that doorway." Chiron furrowed his brow. "Lucas, go push that button up there once more so Wolfram and I can see. It's the one that says Last History Capture." Once Lucas made it up to the second floor, he pressed the button as instructed. Lucas and Wolfram watched the way Lucas had pointed carefully. A strange static rip happened in thin air as it slowly opened, revealing a pair of white orbs. Then a hand appeared, the shape of a human, but something in their gut said it was not. The hand did a rhythmic and graceful wave as the hologram fell to its knees and cried out. The hand clenched suddenly into a fist and gave one strong pulling motion. The hologram burst into particles as a bright light appeared in the hand. It was the shape of a human, but the features were of something demonic. The rip closed immediately when it had stepped through, as it did another waving motion and another rip appeared. It looked like on the other side of the rip was a forest, but the first one was a solid color and nothing more. It entered the next rip as it closed behind. "That's the same shadow that took that little girl, Carmen. So, it was able to open the in-between here? How though?" "Something that they were doing must have created enough energy that it needed to create the rip?" No. Wolfram shook his head and furrowed his brow. "No, it was something else. I'm positive it had to do something with my mistake. However, it could be something related to my mistake, magnifying the magic, as you call it." "Maybe the soul chamber has some more clues in it?" "All right, Lucas. We're heading to the soul chamber. Let us know if you find anything else on the way down here." Wolfram and Chiron made their way to the chamber. It was exactly as it was before, an untouched sense. The body tanks filled with light blue liquid held them in a state of dormant where they would not decompose. The souls floated like fireflies in the giant glass ball at the center of the room, hanging from the ceiling. I wonder how they got the souls out of that ball. Better yet, I wonder how they were able to choose which specific one they were looking for. They all look the same. Lucas looked up for a moment as he furrowed his brow. "It's been a while since they spoke. I was beginning to wonder." "What'd they say?" "Apparently they had some sort of device that one person wore that transferred the soul from the glass into the body. They would hit something on the dash here to locate it and pull it from the glass, quickly inserting it into the clone. Souls cannot last long without a host from what I'm gathering." "Wait." Chiron began as he turned to Wolfram. "So, how did Carmen's soul last that long in the in-between?" "The laws of physics and laws of time do not apply the same in the in-between as they do here. It's untelling how long a single minute is there. Perhaps it's doubled or quadrupled, maybe even years." That reminds me of the Narnia books. "The what?" "Never mind. What about the shadow that is housing her soul? Is a shadow even a host?" "Not that I was ever aware of, but I suppose, like all things, there are exceptions. It seems as though that particular shadow is special in some way. Obviously, it is much more intelligent than the average shadow. However, it seems to have something else to it. So does that one that came through first. The one that took Carmen's body as a girl and forced her soul in between." Lucas had been staring at the ceiling. "They're afraid of the shadows, the voices here." "What did they say?" "They just keep saying fear when you say the word shadow." "A building afraid of shadows? But why?" "They're not saying." "Let us know if they say anything else. For now, let's investigate to see if we can find anything to aid us." They began searching through the drawers and cabinet spaces in the soul chamber, but there was little to find and most of it was completely worthless. Lucas then located a book that had seen better days in a small compartment inside of the cabinet. I found something, but it looks like it's in a foreign language. Wolfram took a look at the wording on it and shook his head. It must be the same as what the hologram was shouting in. Wait, then why was the button that gave the last history captured in our language? Good point. Perhaps they had a special language for scientists who worked on this soul capture project. Why not make the entirety of the facility in the same language then? I don't rightly know. That makes a good point. Are they saying anything else, Lucas? Lucas shook his head. I wonder if there are any other areas we haven't searched. Speaking of searching, I found this while we were in that dungeon place, but didn't want to say anything in front of Emily. Kyron dug in his pocket and pulled out a rock in the shape of an ursing. By the gods! Wolfram breathed as he took it in his hand. This makes 3. I'll be damned. So it seems like each occurrence is related to this artifact. Lucas had one on him when his anomaly appeared. The one that I stole before coming here. Now this one where Emily was tortured and modified? But perhaps it's not related to Emily, but the occurrence at the facility itself, with the shadow. So where did it come from then? I don't know. Do you think these people made them? How could that be? There's one in every dimension except for Lucas as it's here now. But wait. Did you not say that the worlds are parallel, mine and yours, were just from different times? Wolfram's brow furrowed. So mine is legit. Is this one the real thing too? How'd they come to have possession of it? They all pondered this when they heard shouting close by. They turned to the portion of the facility where they had watched the hologram play as it furrows. The hologram fell to its knees once more and screamed as it blew into particles. What the hell just happened? Karen questioned as they gawked at what they had just seen. Who pushed that button? They couldn't have gotten far because there's only one exit to the upstairs in here, Wolfram said as he hightailed it into the main room again. Gazing up, there was not a person or entity to be found. It seemed as though they were still alone. Wolfram turned and looked at the boys. We were together. Did the button get stuck? Don't know. Let me go look, Kyron said as he jogged up the stairs. Tread carefully, Kyron. Kyron ascended the stairs and walked at a normal pace while looking around the upper floor. Coming up to the button, he turned to the side to see if it had gotten partially stuck, but it didn't seem it had. Either that or it had become unstuck when it played the recording again. Nothing up here that I can see. The button's not stuck from what I can tell. Kyron then had an idea. He looked at the other buttons for a time search and cocked his head to the side a moment before approaching them. He put his hand on one of the dials and turned it as it rapidly went through the numbers. What he was confused about, these years made no sense to him. These were all placed in future times, much further than they were in, but they were labeled as the past. Wolfram, what year did you say your win was? Born in 448. Why, you ask? Well, okay, just wondering. These dates are all many, many years from now according to this calendar. How far are we talking? Keep in mind, I'm from a parallel world and not from here, so times could be different. It wouldn't base it off my win. Well, Karen began as he continued staring at the numbers and chuckled. The last recording shows it was dated the year 6235. There are previously dated, but they don't begin until 5998. Still, that is so far ahead of our calendar. How do you think that is? Surely they were not time travelers, or they could have gone back and found some suitable people, to use to reproduce, right? I doubt it, as it looks like they mainly worked with science and not magic. Do you think it's like BC and AD kind of thing? Like the time before, so they were like BC and we're in AD? That seems more plausible than them using magic or time travel. I have not come across anything that seemed like it was capable of such things. Then again, we have not explored this entire place yet. Kyron nodded and looked through the dial again, going all the way to the oldest recording beginning at 5998. He then pressed the button to display the recording, but nothing happened. Furrowing his brow, he glanced up to the year screen, but instead it displayed an error. Recording corrupted. Kyron went to the next recording. The same thing occurred. He did this repeatedly and then began skipping years after months and days showing the same issue. He finally came across one that decided to play. The hologram took place where he was standing, but in the corner portion of the upstairs. Kyron backed up and watched.
If you're watching this, you are already somewhat familiar with the situation we are facing. It is pertinent that we find a solution to this disease if we are to.
The hologram glitched out and went away. The screen displayed, recording corrupted. The hell? It was only 10 seconds into it. He began scrolling each day, trying each one until he reached another finally beginning at 60:33. The hologram came up in the same corner as the previous one had.
Good evening.
The man said, who sat at the desk. His hands were clasped together in front of him on top of his table, and he lowered his head as he shook it once. Raising his head again, his expression was nothing short of dismay.
We are having little luck with impregnating any female hosts by placing an egg within her womb that has previously been activated prior to insertion. The female reproductive system continues to reject the eggs. Unfortunately, all of the clinics with frozen, activated eggs are running critically low. We have yet to find a male who is capable of producing live sperm. All of the semen we have collected, not one subject has had a single live sperm. We are running out of options and may be facing extinction if we're not able to proceed with Experiment 208. All previous experiments have failed. We are worldwide working on a new clinical trial to begin working with. We have yet to develop the technology needed for some of the suggestions provided.
The man looked down at his lap and shook his head again.
As of current, we are not looking positive.
The recording ended. Kyron stared at the corner for a moment with a frown. Reverting back to the recording screen, he moved it up nearly 100 years and then began searching at the beginning of the year. Nearly all of these were also corrupted, to his dismay. After searching for several months and all the recordings show corrupted, he came across one that began playing in the same corner.
We have become so acquainted over these years, have we not?
Said an older woman. Kyron wondered where the previous man went and then realized he was deceased at this point.
We were having such positive results with the clone trials. However, it seems something has changed in either the flesh, body, or in the soul. We have not yet been able to detect what this molecular mutation is, or if it is a change in our unique makeup. We have continued using the same techniques that have provided such outstanding results. Identical body replicas for our scientists are continuing to work on a cure or an alternative remedy. The first soul and body rejection began with Dr. Warren LeBlanc. He began falling critically ill within approximately 168 hours after the insertion. His body began breaking down on a molecular level, similar to the ancient invasive mutation cells that cause excessive cell reproduction, resulting in organ failure and death. Rather than growth, however, it was a reduction. After this occurred, we watched the following doctors and scientists who had most recently had an insertion. Each day we scanned them and ran all possible tests to try and capture where this was beginning and to find an alternative. As of present, we have lost over 100. Our population reported as of this morning is less than 0.01% of the population since this disease was first spotted.
She paused a moment and looked away as if to reflect before returning her sights at the camera again.
We are not hopeful, but yet we work tirelessly for something that does not appear to be within our reach.
The recording ended as Kyron investigated others. Most, just like before, were all corrupted. He located another one that would play for the year 6201.
I have no formalities, but am required to record our findings regardless. We have begun freezing healthy and seemingly stable scientists for different time periods in hopes that we will be able to find a cure in the future if we, who are still present now in the year 6201, have been unsuccessful and perished. With this being said, I am likely going to meet my entire end. I was rejected from being a subject for the Soul Tank, as it has become too full, and they are allowing only the top scientists to reserve a spot in the tank. I ranked 15th, which was dead last. Yes, that is how many of us are still here. The populace died long ago, and we have been working until we nearly grieve for a break from this. Body after body we inhabit, while some begin rejecting, and we simply could not continue to dispose of the clones at the rate that the soul went through them, and made the crucial choice of allowing them to move on. We have begun new trials that we hope will be more successful. We have nothing left to do but to try the final and most dangerous of all trials in order to save humanity. We shall see what the future holds.
The man on the screen covered his mouth as he looked away and began to sob before the hologram disappeared. Kyron watched the man disappear and looked down at his feet. He had never really put a lot of thought into death or when his time would come. The man who had clearly been alive for hundreds of years due to his clone bodies making it, was now finally about to face death with nothing ahead of him. No new body. Nothing. That must be something difficult to cope with, to say the least. He then thought of Volford and how this world affected his aging process and how long he had been here. Returning to the screen, he pushed it a bit further, arriving at the year 6235. He sifted through all of the corrupted recordings until he came across one earlier in the year that finally worked. A man appeared that seemed to be frazzled. His hair was astray and his coat was visibly dirty.
I'm all that remains now. I've been working tirelessly on this fucking disease and cure for hundreds of years, and for what? Nothing! Nothing has changed. I watched my family die over 200 years ago. My wife. I don't want her forgotten. Her name was Aisha. She had the most beautiful light auburn hair that flowed down to her mid-back. Vivid, big green eyes that looked like you could just dive into a lily pond just staring at them. Oren, my son. He grew up to be a successful man and did not choose the path of science as I did. But I'm not angry that he did not. I would not want this life for him. I watched my baby boy pass away at the age of 84. It hurt to watch him age, grow old, feeble. God, it all hurts so bad. Aisha, she made it to 70. I watched them both turn gray and their skin lose its elasticity. I watched them lose their strength, but they never stopped loving me. I wish that we could have had the authority before to capture their souls in a holding tank, so that I could keep them until I could make them brand new bodies. If only. I would have probably been executed for such a thought anyway. I've been alive far too long. I have no one by my side when I die. I'm as alone as one could ever be. I don't even think this recording will ever be seen by anyone, other than the two who have been frozen. Oscar is to unthaw first in the year 6500. He was such an asshole, but brilliant. Then the final Damon, set for 8,000. He was a very unusual fellow, but was marked a genius in his intelligence. He is set for last due to him being the final chance for humanity. Quite a significant gap between the two, but the elders had their reasons before they were placed in the soul tank. Of course, if we find a cure, we'll be able to unthaw them all well before then. But I highly doubt it. Oh, and if any of you are watching this, just wanted to give you one last Fuck you, Oscar, you're a bitch.
The man smiled wryly, and then it faded as he looked down.
I'm about to perform the most dangerous of clinical trials in order to save humanity. It's likely to result in my death, but I have to. Before I do, I want to talk. Just talk. Pretend as if I'm speaking to someone. Just to have that final interaction, in the likelihood that this experiment ends my life. It's not like I myself have anything to lose. I've lost everything, even my original body. Sometimes I think of how this is not even my real organic body and it gives me the shivers. That and the possibility that my soul and body could reject one another at any time is frightening. In a way, I'm ready to finally pass on, but at the same time, I'm afraid of the finality of it. What happens after? Where do the souls go? Do they ascend as the scriptures always said, or do they just go away? Just cease to exist? Food used to be so damn good. Pizza, pasta, ice cream, fried ham. Hell, I'd even go for one of those Spam pineapple grilled cheese things my wife used to make. That was struggle food, but it was food. Now and for many years now, we've had supplements to keep our bodies alive and healthy. I miss the way things tasted. Oh, and the way grass feels on your feet. I may just go for a walk before I do the final trial. Maybe I will go watch the sunset one last time.
Tears streamed down the man's face as he looked down and let out a single sob. He moved his hand in front of him and gazed at his hand.
I've been widowed for over 200 years, and I still wear this ancient band of mine. It reminds me of what once was and is no longer. That life once flourished on this planet. The final hour was when I sat by my wife as she lay on her deathbed in the hospital. She was so thin and frail, but she was mine. Her hair had thinned and turned snowy white early on. One of our last conversations we had, she asked, "Why do you still stay by my side? I'm old and dying." And I responded to her.
He paused a moment as he sobbed again, putting his hand over his face and pressing his temples.
I told her it was because I loved her. Not her body, but her soul, her. I loved her.
The recording ended abruptly as Kyron felt a single tear slide down his cheek. Damn. Returning to the screen, he saw there was one final recording before the one where the same man died in a horrific manner.
Logan here. This will likely be my final recording. I had such a nice walk and watched the sunset. I'd even found a bottle of wine stashed away in one of the other scientists' rooms. They must have forgotten about it before passing. It was dated 59/22. And you bet it was incredible. Spent the night getting drunk and enjoying myself to the best of my ability before passing out. I took a hangover pill and I'm feeling much better now. Thank goodness I was still able to find a few of those pharmaceuticals. With that being said, I'm about to perform the trial. I am leaving detailed notes of my research and my logs. They can all be found in the soul chamber. It provides every detail of what I have done and how I'm planning on performing this experiment. I cannot believe after everything that all has failed. Impregnating women with an activated sperm, fail. Animal trials in the same manner but housing a human egg, fail. Creating a fetus through scientific means, fail. Clones, all have failed but mine and the two frozen. We even tried making robotic bodies that could house souls. That was a complete dead end. It was still something that hadn't been attempted, though. It was something, but it was still a failure. We even looked into food and water contaminations early on that could have started this disease, or were spreading it. We found nothing. Early on, I recall the females who were still capable of birth were paid a healthy amount of currency to reproduce as much as possible. We hoped the new offspring would have reproduction capabilities just like their parents, but no. Every newborn had all the work to reproduce, but they were eventually deemed useless organs. It was a strange time to be alive back then. I feel like my grandfather talking. Back in my day. How silly to think of that now.
He sighed and shook his head.
Well, getting on to this trial. In essence, I will be trying to open a rip in time and go forward several thousand years from now in hopes that nature took its course and reanimated humanity as it was. Capable of reproducing and has enough advanced technology to cure this disease. Either that or I'm destined to do the same thing but bring back several men and women who can reproduce back to this time in order to keep humanity going. If I'm able to do either, humanity's saved. I'm using a machine I designed that had been declared as a last result. Well, this is our last resort. The machine, if it works as I intend it to, is capable of creating a quantum black hole. It has been seen throughout history that black holes and dark matter go hand in hand together. In a sense, that is. We know that dark matter is not likely to fall into a black hole as it does not typically interact with other normal matter. With that being said, black holes swallow anything that comes close enough to the event horizon. Black holes have been researched for thousands of years and we still know little about them. Each satellite we have sent its way was always crushed by gravity before it completely passed the event horizon. Well, we always assumed that it was due to gravity. It could be the circuits fried from the energy coming off the black hole. It's my theory at least. Alright, onward. Again, more details are in my journal, for those who are watching. So, with that short explanation of the two I mentioned, I believe that dark matter is capable of falling into a black hole. So the energy between those two theoretically will force a hole in time. It sounds so simple saying it, but I've been working on this for over 100 years, trying to figure it out and work out the kinks. Additionally, I have no idea what could go wrong. It could blow up this entire facility, or it could just not work at all. It's difficult to say. It's difficult to tell. It may even open up a black hole and this planet will be swallowed. I don't know. I'm going to set the system to record it once the process has begun. Hopefully this is it. If not, it's not my problem anymore.
Kyron stood there dumbfounded for a moment before jumping. I can't believe it, Wolfram said from behind. How long have you been there? Christ, you scared the daylights out of me. Long enough. Son, do you know what this means? It's untelling with you. This means it wasn't me. I was not the cause of this. Wolfram smiled. It was not me who did this to all these people. My family? Carmen? It was this man's fault. How is that? It happened a long time ago. It was a long time ago that I thought it was me as well. How would something that happened that long ago cause this to happen now? Time is such a difficult thing to understand, but consider this. I could time travel, and sometimes it was unnerving trying to understand how something that happened then would happen now, but it does. Everything you do affects history in some way, somehow, and somewhen. This is the same. That's confusing, but I get what you're meaning. I read a story about that in 3rd grade. These people who time traveled to some prehistoric time, and they were advised to not touch anything. And while they were there, one of the tourists was deeply afraid of moths and killed one that landed on him. And then when they returned to the present time, everything had changed. That is a stupid analogy for it, but it works from my understanding the concept. Kyron said nothing as he internally huffed. He had really enjoyed that story. Now, we just need to figure out how to fix this. But how? I have too much trouble creating portals. I'm not positive if it is due to this or what. Is it possible for you to run out of your magic? Wolfram furrowed his brow. It's not unheard of, but it's a very rare thing to occur. 3 recorded in history, in fact. I sure hope that isn't the case with me. Is there something small and simple you could try? Well, there is a little trick I learned from a fire-loving dabbler. It just needs a tiny little spark to get it to start. I don't have any flint, though. I have a lighter. I don't need a torch, son. No, it's... never mind. Here. Now, how does this trick work? I just need to snap my fingers with just a tiny bit of dabbling put forth. If this thing works like flint, it should allow me to make a little flame. Kyron placed the lighter near Wolfran's thumb and forefinger while pressing the gas button. Alright, go. Wolfran snapped his fingers. Lo and behold, a little flame levitated just above an inch from his fingers. Wolfran grinned ear to ear. I forgot how entertaining that little trick is. Can you do anything with it? Wolfran nodded and opened his palm as it floated, then gave a motion with his pinky as the flame turned a deep purple. That is so cool. Wolfran curled his wrist as he made a fist, exhausting the flame. It is, but we have more pressing matters at the moment. At least we know I'm not out of juice, so to speak. Let's head back upstairs and discuss our findings. Wolfran turned and glanced around before turning to Kyron. Where's Lucas? Kyron peered over to the side railing and scanned the lower floor. Lucas! The echo seemed to go on for several rounds before fading away. Silence followed. Come on, he probably is in another room where the echo isn't reaching him, Kyron said as he descended the steps with Wolfran right behind him. They returned to the soul chamber and found him sitting with his legs crisscrossed, looking at a tattered book. Dude, why didn't you answer us? Lucas looked up and glanced around. Oh, I didn't hear you. Sorry. I found this book and I'm able to read it. Isn't that the same book that Wolfran and I looked at earlier that is in some ancient language? Yes, I guess, since we are from different dimensions, this language was not in yours at the time. I don't know how that works exactly, but this one I took in high school. I was always super fascinated by Hebrew. What's Hebrew? It's one of the oldest languages that was around in my world that was still around in present time. Oh, that sounds like the same as Greek here. I haven't heard of it. Sounds rather neat, though. Son, this is groundbreaking news. All 3 of us have found quite a bit here. Let us return back upstairs and discuss our findings. Upon arriving back at the ground level portion of the facility, they found Emily still curled up in the corner where they had left her. Poor little thing's tuckered. You make her sound like she's a dog. And do you think dogs are beneath us? Kyron tilted his head as he shifted his sights away. He had always heard the term treated like a dog, and it typically meant poorly. However, dogs were some of the most loyal and intelligent creatures of his time. The analogy did not seem to make any sense after considering it. I guess you're right. Let's allow her to rest. You know she's not gotten true rest in quite a long time. Wolfran said as he made his way into the kitchen living area and sat down in the middle of the floor. Alright, boys. Gather round. Let's see what we can come up with. The other 2 sat down, creating a circle. Alright, Lucas. So here's a summary of our findings. First of all, I was not the one who caused all these random time rips. It was the last scientist. The one that we saw on the hologram explode. Really? Lucas raised his brows. My point exactly, for which I am very pleased. Lastly, it looks like Savior was the last scientist to unthaw. They had apparently frozen 2 of them and spaced their arrivals with significant gaps. Looks like the final one that they had called Genius had either lost his mind or saw that there were humans again and decided to take advantage of his repulsive fetish. Emily, Lucas whispered. Unfortunately, yes. I don't even know enough magic to try to even consider even fixing her back to normal. This is more advanced than I. It's near mastery level magic. Lucas grimaced. Also, I believe that I just maybe will be able to fix little Carmen and stop the Umbra from hunting me.
So why is it hunting you?
Oh, you weren't around when that happened, were you? That's right. Well, if you look at Lieutenant Umbra in the eyes, you are marked, and it will hunt you eternally, at least from my observations. A horrifying thing to see, too.
What does it look like?
It looks like the shadow of a person, but standing and moving independently. What's scariest to me is the fact that it had completely solid white eyes that seem to let off light, as if they're glowing. Seems contradictory seeing as it's a shadow, but they're there. It has sharp claws, almost like a bird of prey. Lastly, the one thing that sets it completely apart from the others is its head looks like it's constantly exploding. Shards of black are consistently going in and out around its head.
Good grief.
And imagine that thing hunting you.
I'd rather not.
So, how do you think you can fix Carmen and get rid of the shadow then? Well, here's the hard part. We're gonna have to find Carmen. Secondly, we need to find the Umbra. I cannot see how we can find them both at the same time, nor do I see us finding a way to find one and hold the other while searching for the other one. We'll have to attract them both at the same time. How do you suppose we do that? I can obviously use myself as bait for the Umbra. The body of Carmen is another story. I can't rightly say what would attract it. Is it drawn to anything that you know of? Like anything at all? Not that I can think of. Wait, Kyron interjected. Didn't you say that you had seen a whole event through a looking glass or whatever you called it? Can you do it again? There was immense power that helped me locate it immediately. Unless the body's letting off intense power, I won't be able to just locate it unless I already know where it is. Why wouldn't the shadow controlling her body be letting off that kind of power then? That is the most intelligent shadow I've ever encountered. It's likely using some kind of masking mechanism to hide. That is so crazy. There's so much to magic. More than this world will ever know, or any other world for that matter. We'll have to brainstorm to figure out a good plan for that. At least it is possible. How exactly, though? I will need to visit my cabin and collect all my books I can carry and study for a while. This is going to be the most advanced thing I have ever attempted. I will set off at dawn for them. Until then, Lucas, what have you found? Lucas opened the book to the first page.
It says here that it belonged to the same scientist in the hologram, which we already knew. A lot of things in here I do not really understand. I was a top student at school, but this is some seriously complicated theories and research that were put into this. It's a rather long journal. So do you want me to just read it, or do I look for something specific?
Look for anything that says dark matter. As Lucas began scanning the pages in the book, Kyron turned to Wolfram. I thought of something else. If they spoke and wrote both in English and Hebrew, then why did Lucas not understand what the scientist cried before passing? Lucas, the hologram you watched, did it speak Hebrew just before it died? Lucas shook his head and went back to scanning.
It was not anything I've ever heard before.
Wonder what it was. It sounded like he had spoken rather than making strange noises during that cry. I agree. I don't know. Perhaps he knew a language none of us are familiar with and it just slipped out in a fit of intense motion. Kyron then chuckled to himself. I wonder if he shouted something like, what the hell, or, oh shit. Wolfram shot him a dirty look. It would be funny if he didn't die. Kyron's smile faded. Sorry. Sometimes I think you speak before you think. I admit that I do. Sometimes, that is. Wolfram made a strange expression as he leaned to the side and began digging in his pocket. Oh right, these guys, he said as he held the two small Ursing rocks in the palm of his pocket. Where'd you say you found this again? Down in the chamber where Emily was. Our words are parallel, not in different dimensions, so to speak. Does this mean that these two rocks are actually the same rock from different time periods? I had the rock after all this occurred, and here's where it originally was before I obtained it. That does not seem right. We are much further in the future than mine went, so... Is this where the rock ended up after I had it and passed? Or is it a separate rock because it's in a different world? I'm doubting my memory. Was it different worlds or dimensions that have at least one? That's really confusing. How do you think I feel, son? I have to figure this out. I don't know if it's ever been attempted to use the same rock when there's a duplicate of itself. It seems like it would cause a paradox if a master attempted it. I need to strengthen my skills desperately. Perhaps I can help you practice while Lucas reads through that journal. How can you help me, You know nothing about magic. I helped you ensure that you still had your working magic earlier. Wolfer nodded his head. That, you're right. All right. Within 30 minutes of practice, Lucas spoke up.
Hey guys, I found something.
Wolfert and Chiron rushed back over and sat down on the floor.
So it says here.
Lucas began as he leaned into the book and followed it with his finger.
He decided to pursue the black hole and dark matter theory due to repetitive dreams he had about it. One dream had a strange figure in it and would simply say dark matter is the answer. But he never understood. It was years later that he had the dream again after the outbreak. He went back and forth with himself for some time while doing other research with the scientist who had asked to be lead for finding the cure. He asked himself if this was a message from the light or dark side, assuming he means good or evil. After several months went by, he could not seem to push it completely in the back of his mind and began to toy with the idea.
Rather than an epiphany, it seems like he was being visited by an omen.
Indeed it does. Moving forward, technology was advancing quickly for the ages and the clones were being created to allow the last of the scientists left to continue their work. He was one of them. He was nearly 75 when he received his new body. He was dying of some kind of something he called cancer. His body clone was restored at the age of 18 to ensure the hormones would not interfere with his work. Apparently their hormones still worked, but the reproductive systems didn't. Anyway, he began seeing this thing and asked to be checked for something called psychosis, where one hallucinates, it says. After being tested thoroughly, it was determined his chemical makeup suggested that that was negative.
Ooh, that's cool. Nowadays you have to rely on a therapist to consider if it's the case or not. Like a guesstimate is what I like to call it. If it sounds like a mental illness, they ask specific questions that determine whether it is or not. They're sometimes wrong and diagnose someone with the wrong diagnosis, either due to the patient being afraid of admitting certain symptoms or because the symptom overlapped with other illnesses. During that guy's timeline, they could just run tests for the specific imbalance to determine the severity of, or, if something was present. Hush, Kyron, let Lucas finish.
He continued seeing it and wondered if he had a medical condition that was causing it. He got tested for everything, but it all turned up negative. It did not seem like a side effect of the clones, as no one else was experiencing it themselves. He determined, since it did not seem to be medical or chemical, that it was just simply on his head and he needed to either forget about it or focus on it and figure out how it is the answer. Several years after his son's and wife's death, seems his wife was much younger than him when they eloped. This became his main focus. He determined his had to be a message from a higher entity or in order to save humanity.
Did he ever describe what this strange figure looked like?
Let me see.
Lucas drawled on as his finger went down line by line, flipping through the several pages. Then he went back several pages, thinking it was likely the beginning when he spotted it.
Here it is. It says here, I keep having this strange dream. It has begun consuming my nights and now my thoughts. Seems as though I cannot stop thinking of it. Little signs during my waking hours refer back to the dream. I am in a place where it appears I am standing on a black sheet of ice and in blackness as far as I can see. Before me, my eyes are able to adjust to a small figure from the reflection of the black ice. The figure seems like the shadow of a boy. I would deem it a shadow, but it had two glowing eyes that stared into my very being. His eyes always gave me the shivers. I cannot move while in this state. It's as if I'm frozen stiff or paralyzed. The boy never approaches me, but always says the same thing. Dark matter is always the answer. I do not understand what that means. I have looked into it some, but it was never my field of science. From what I've gathered, dark matter is what makes up most of the space and is related to black holes. I will need to dig more deeply into this to understand it better. However, my time always seems to run short. We are in a worldwide pandemic, and we are running out of time. No one can reproduce, and eventually the populace will die out. Perhaps in my off time, I will give it some more attention.
That is the same one piloting Carmen's body. What does it mean, though? How could it appear in dreams like that? It seems that we have much more serious matter on our hands than I originally saw. It crept into his dreams and repeated the same message until the man finally did it. Horrifying but interesting. I do wonder why it's not appeared in our dreams, or is it even aware we are pursuing it in the first place? Now I'm not going to know whether this thing is visiting in my dreams or if it's just a manifestation of my mind due to what I just heard. Great. Thanks. Chiron rolled his eyes. His lips went into a thin line as he looked back to Wolfrin. Wait, I just realized something else. How could Carmen's body be in this world and Lucas's too? Good point. Why did I not notice that before? Maybe it can travel, but that would make no sense why it hasn't traveled more unless it actually has, and we just have yet to detect it doing so. Hopefully that was a shadow that Lucas saw imitating a girl who looked identical to Carmen, but in that world and had lived in that rundown house before. Why did the house look all well kept when he entered then? Perhaps the shadow was not only using masking on itself, but the home to lure Lucas in? But why? Lucas, had you ever seen that house before?
I had, but I hadn't put any thought into it. It went into foreclosure before we had even moved there. No one ever bought it, and it stayed in the bank's possession the whole time as far as I know. I don't know the history of it, though. The house only tried to warn me, but that was it.
I wonder if the shadow's working with the other two. Perhaps, but it does not seem that it succeeded in whatever it was trying to do with Lucas. His soul is in his body, though the body did receive quite a bit of blow. How did his soul even re-enter his body anyway? Don't they ascend or whatever when they leave the body? Lucas, from your appearance, no offense, how long would you guess that your body was dead? Less than a week, because it does appear you are bloated from the gases. However, for your blood to pool in certain parts of your body, leaving the discolored portions. I do wonder how you did not attract flies or other pests that consume decay.
I'm not sure, but I would say perhaps 4 or 5 days. I still wonder if anyone could see me and why no one found my body during that time.
I don't rightly know. There seems to be a lot of masking involved in your story from the shadow you encountered. It looks like it masked you so you could locate the soul, but never ended up being able to. Do you remember anything between the time you theoretically died and then woke?
No, I do remember falling from the 3rd story and feeling immense pain, but only for a moment. I woke in the yard, partially covered in dirt. I still had the chandelier arm in my abdomen. I don't know if I went unconscious from the pain or from my body instinctively dragged me out or if something carried me. Perhaps a wild dog drugged me out, but no. Perhaps a wild dog drugged me out but found no interest after. Maybe it rained and I sank in the mud, then it later dried and that's how I was covered. I really have no idea.
This keeps getting deeper and deeper, but it's all connected. To be honest, I feel like I'm getting confused and losing track of some things. What's worse is it's likely to go much further. What I'm most puzzled about is how did your soul not ascend? Where did it go until those few days passed when you awoke again? How did that happen and why?
I have no memory of that time.
Not only that, but why did that shadow want you specifically?
I don't know. I guess because I can hear buildings.
That's something I'd like to know too. How did that ability come about? Sounds like a child's tale, but rather useful actually. You said you have had it as long as you can remember?
Right.
Do you believe in magic, Lucas?
Real magic? I can't say I do. Not in my world, at least.
It is said that the ancient dabbler scrolls that the magic has cycles in certain worlds. Some generations have it while most do not. Perhaps you're part of that generation, which is my only guess about your special ability. You may even be a dabbler yourself and simply not know it.
How could that be? I feel like I would have had an accidental trick or something happen by now.
Maybe you did. Lucas furrowed his brow as he tilted his head. Look at you, Lucas. You're a living, walking corpse. Why did I not think of it before? Think, Lucas. The answer's right in front of you.
You?
No, you dunce. You! Wolfram pointed. Lucas looked himself over, then back to Wolfram.
I think it was just some paranormal instance that happens 1 in a trillion. That and the house thing could be related to those who claim they can talk to ghosts. 1 in a million? Maybe I'm just one huge coincidence.
You and I both know we both highly doubt that. You're probably masking without even realizing it. Are you an anxious person?
Well, yeah, I figured you would have noticed that by now.
Okay, so your instincts probably have you nearly a 24/7 masking going on. It likely was let down long enough for the shadow to find you and lure you. Then your fear crept in, and the mask went right back up and strongest before you died. But when one dies, one typically has no control over anything. The body shows obvious signs of decay, so the body was not necessarily alive during those days. You're such an anomaly.
Aw, thanks,
Lucas said sarcastically. No, I truly mean that. I'm not trying to antagonize you in any way. So what kind of dabbling does your instinct and subconscious know that your aware conscious does not? This is not even any type of dabbling I know or have ever heard of, so it's special in some way. I would like to learn a little bit more about it. Perhaps this may be the key to our success. Not 1 dabbler, but 2. It would increase our odds.
How am I supposed to even know what to do to try anything?
Lucas looked at both of his hands.
When I was little, I used to concentrate really hard on one object to see if I could make it move without touching. I never could, though.
Surprisingly, that requires advanced dabbling. It's very difficult to do.
So what am I supposed to do then?
Well, since it seems like you don't know how to wield it necessarily, but are connected to strong emotions, let's begin talking about something that troubles you greatly, to the point that you are very uncomfortable. This could trigger something I'm thinking. So, think. I know we gotta get personal, but it's for a great reason.
Well,
Lucas sighed as he set the journal to the side.
It's a rather long story, but I suppose that helps.
Go right ahead.
When I was 16, one of my best friends died in a car accident. It was not her fault. She was heading home one night after visiting me, and there was a drunk driver. She was T-boned when he ran a red light.
I'm sorry, but I am from a different time. To better understand your story, I must ask you a few questions. What is a car and a red light?
A car is like a mechanical horse or buggy. The red light is in place to know who can drive, turn, or who needs to stop and wait to let others go.
Wolford nodded then once more for Lucas to continue.
I feel guilty to this day. I feel like I'm responsible for her death.
Why's that? Wolford asked as he furrowed his brows. You were not the drunk driver who hit her.
No, but she was going home after visiting me. If I would have not asked her to come over that night, she would have lived.
You had no way of knowing that such a thing would happen. I'm sure the drunk felt the same. Shock.
Well,
Lucas sighed.
Anyway, it is the only funeral I ever attended, and I marked it that it would be my very last, no matter who the funeral was for. Not only was the weight of the grief heavy on me, but the rest of the mourners who attended. It was thick as molasses in the atmosphere. It was heavy enough to feel as though someone was standing on my chest. It was hard to breathe. My body ached like I had the flu. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. I stifled my cries and remained silent, but cry I did. Upon entering the funeral home, I had something happen to me that I have never had happen before. It was the most unsettling thing I have ever felt. The voices of the mourners filled the rooms with a soft murmur, but nothing else.
What do you mean?
Silence. Silence I have never heard before. There was nothing. If I'm near any buildings, I can hear them, even if they're distant. Just as if a person's far away, it's difficult to hear, but you still can. I can be in a building just like an apartment complex and hear the others around me, or at a strip where there are multiple stores close to one another. I can still faintly hear the building that is next to the one I'm in, but when I walked inside, I heard absolute silence. It was like it blocked out all the other buildings around me. Even if the building was not speaking, it still has an air to it, as if you can audibly feel it's there. I know that may not make sense to you, but that is the only way I can describe it. But this one had not your everyday silence. The silence was dead. Sure, that may sound ironic, but it was as if the funeral home itself, being what it is and what goes inside, was also dead. An empty vessel.
Interesting.
I tried to focus on those around me talking, but the silence I was hearing was somehow amplified. It overpowered all sound, but when they played a song for her, it helped because it was rather loud, but this was the only relief I had from the silence until I left. I had even stepped outside several times trying to get my grounding. I felt like I was going crazy. I just could not handle that silence. It was like it was slowly sucking the life out of me. As I said before, the grief in the air was heavy, but this only added to the weight that was pressing down on me. I began shaking halfway through the service and sweating profusely. Several people asked me if I was going to be okay, and I brushed it off as the reason why I was there. It was perfectly believable. Why would they have any reason to doubt it? To question it? Lucas is crying, his face is red, and he's sweating and shaking. He's grieving. Perfectly normal at a funeral. It worked. As the service was ending, I tried to be as close to the first in line as respectable to the family as possible. Once they had their words and went on, allowing the next in line to give their goodbyes. As I stood waiting, it was as if the silence was a sentient thing. Maybe it was a deadness that was gripping me. Maybe I was under so much stress that I was experiencing a tactical hallucination. Maybe it was something else. But something kept gripping me tighter and tighter the longer I stayed inside, wrapping its invisible fingers around my throat little by little. Finally, it was my turn. I'd been so focused on trying to remain calm from the silence that I'd not even realized what I was seeing around me. It hit me hard. Seeing my best friend, only 16, lying in a casket. Her skin lost its glow, leaving behind a cold appearance. Her beautiful hands seemed like they were now someone else's. Her lips, pale. Her long auburn hair was straightened as she always had it, and flowing over her shoulders and around her small little bosom. She was a petite little thing. But even though I knew she was dead and gone from her body, and that I was attending her funeral, it still came as shock to me when I came close to her. It was like someone had replaced her with a replica dummy. It looked just like her, but it did not feel like her. It was just the vessel she drove, and I was just looking down at an empty vessel. It hurt more than it ever could. People who have spoken of the grief of losing someone, I never imagined that it was as painful as it was staring down at her corpse. And to think after all those moves my family made, she was the only one I ever got close to in between these moves. When we met, we clicked just like that. I had even considered asking her to be my girlfriend. I even had a dinner planned for that weekend, too. I had already bought everything. I was going to cook for her and have a candlelit dinner while my parents were out on their own date. And then, just like that, she was gone.
Lucas choked on his last words. It seemed like he was on the verge of crying, but no tears came. Perhaps his body was no longer able to produce them. Wolfram suddenly pushed himself away from Lucas quickly with a horrific gasp. Kyron had not seen fear in his eyes like this since the shadow who had Carmen's soul. Kyron jumped away and glanced back and forth at the two when he noticed that Lucas was sitting perfectly still. His eyes, already creepy enough missing their lids, began turning black. What the fuck? Black smoke began emitting from his back as he sat perfectly still. A shadow with what appeared to have long stringy hair looked at both Wolfram and Kyron. From the corner of his eye, he noticed that Emily woke up and slowly backed away into the solitary corner out of sight. Kyron never took his eyes completely off the shadow. Wolfram, Kyron uttered as he made one quick glance at him. He had already gotten to his feet with his back against the wall. Shadow? Why are you here? Wolfram asked in a quivering voice. It looked at him as its hair slowly moved over its eyes, blocking them out partially for a moment, before it parted back away to the side. What made them eerier was the fact that this one's eyes were not white as the others. They were the same light brown as Lucas's eyes, but glowing.
I have always been here.
What do you mean?
I have been with him since his birth.
You have attached to this boy?
Indeed, I have. He knows not.
Is that how he truly never ascended? When he died?
I know not. Even I was dormant until his soul returned into the vessel.
What? Why did you choose him?
My past host was dying. I did not wish to return. My host was in the building of the sick and dying. So was this boy. He was but an hour old when I jumped him.
Shadows can soul jump? I thought once they bonded it was for life.
Nay, for some, not for me.
Why did you choose Lucas instead of one of the other infants?
His soul was unique. I know not why. It could be felt. He has lasted more than a century.
Lucas is over 100 years old now? Kyron interjected. The shadow merely glanced at him before returning to Wolfram. What did you feel?
I have been for over millennia. His soul emitted something never felt before.
But have not the words for it? Are you the reason he can hear others who have masked themselves?
Nay.
Wolfram furrowed his brow as he looked to Kyron. Do you know why he can?
Nay.
Is he a dabbler?
Nay.
The lines on Wolfram's face grew deeper. What is he?
I know not.
Wolfram stared at the shadow blankly for several moments before recovering. Why have you come out when he's suddenly emotionally distressed?
I know not. You tire me with your questions.
Please, I only have but a few more. It merely stared at him. He was telling us of a memory of visiting his friend's funeral. Did you appear then as well? What happened?
They saw me not. The boy collapsed. After ensuring there was no harm, they laid him upon a pew until coming to. His eyes were closed, and they saw not.
We have seen other shadows. Why are your eyes not white like the others?
Connecting with a host, we acquire their qualities.
Interesting. Wolfram muttered as he looked off as if he had to find more answers there. He then faced the shadow once again. Do you have a name?
Nay.
Do any shadows have names?
Nay, we are ranked.
What rank are you?
Yukaroth.
How many ranks are there?
Many.
May I ask what they are?
You are tiring.
Please, I've never had this opportunity to speak with one of you.
Until he wakes.
I see. May I ask what the lowest rank is?
Archenia.
What is the top rank? The Yuggenroth remained silent as it defensively lowered its head. Is it unspeakable?
Nay, we do not speak of him.
You have a leader?
Nay, he is the only of his kind. He seeks nothing but himself.
Wolfram stared at the Yuggenroth for several moments as he thought his way through all the possibilities. In such an opportunity, it was difficult to classify which was questionable and which was unimportant. In such an opportunity, it was difficult to classify what was questionable and which was unimportant. Were all of his questions being answered in a circle, or were they leading to information never being obtained by man, not since ancient times were lost? May I ask what he's called?
Noxicura.
Why is he the only one of his kind?
He is an abomination of all realms.
How did he become so? The Yuggenroth lowered its head further as if intimidated by the question, and seemed too reluctant to provide anything with their time sensitivity. It was a subject that it seemed it refused to even think of. Why is it classified?
We know not what occurred. We were invaded.
Invaded?
I,
How did this occur?
us Yukaroth below know not. We will extricate if required.
Wolfram held his hands up as if he were talking to a drunk in a bar, trying to exclude themselves from a potential fight. I merely ask. I have no intentions of harm. The Yuggenroth merely stared. How many ranks are above you?
4.
Really? You seem like you are quite intelligent. I assumed you'd have a higher rank.
I have slid from 6th to 5th. I have no intentions to ascend to 4th.
Why is that?
I have achieved sin. I wish to remain this way.
What were you before?
Rock.
How did you achieve Yuggenroth?
This realm refers to them as a poltergeist. If Rock achieves the honor of being the cause of death of a human, we ascend and require sin.
Interesting. Why do you not wish to ascend to the 4th? It menacingly lowered its head.
They are the Conqueror. They have been referenced as the Suicide Shadow.
Why is that?
They wish to destroy their host. Destroying their host also destroys them.
How can they destroy their host? Such as causing medical issues?
Nay, this world calls it many names depending on the host. Most call it depression.
Kyron's brows raised as he glanced to Wolfram. I will cease my invasive questions, but may I ask for your help?
I help no one.
Can you provide me with information that could help?
You are needy. What information do you seek?
Long story short, there's a girl named Carmen. She had her body taken over from another shadow that's small in stature as if it were a boy. The Yuggenroth growled lowly. I'm sorry, I did not wish to upset you.
It is he.
Who?
Noxicura.
Really? It seems that we are hopeless if this is the case. The girl's soul was thrown into the in-between. It seems like another shadow of a high rank blended with her soul and is roaming this plane.
I, Valkyrie, 3rd in rank.
What are they?
Cockroaches that never achieve their goal of destroying the host. It must cause its host a lifetime of grief and misery, and not simply be healed of their depression. The host must be persistent and fight against the urge of suicide until their natural death. Valkyrie are rare.
Wolfram scratched his chin lightly and furrowed his brow. Can the Valkyrie and Noxicura be destroyed or stopped?
Our previous highest rank can.
What or who are they, and how so? How can I reach out to someone for help?
Difficult. We avoid them. They are the Sycamara, rarer than the Valkyrie. We call them the Devourer of Nightmares.
Of nightmares?
Would it not be a devourer of shadows?
Nay, we are not merely shadows. You humans in this today and realm know nothing of us any longer, it seems.
I am from a much earlier time. No one in this today even knows you exist. Even in my wind we know little of you. All of the information during this wind was either lost in time or destroyed to the point of being illegible.
Likely due to the Noxicura, he wishes to ascend higher than he is now, become a god.
How could he? I have heard, just as in the in-between, that the realm of gods is sealed in the out-of-bounds zone.
We refer to him as a glutton. He must have a body to walk this plane due to his impurity. This is why the Valkyrie found the girl's soul. The soul was put into stasis where it can never ascend, and thus the body will remain and never perish. He uses her body to consume the souls nearby.
Do what?
I wish to assist on his end. This I will help you. He remains in a timeless body. When a new soul enters the body, the soul is confused and seems to become a placeholder, allowing it to marinate in a certain state, as long as the soul does not belong in that body. Once it has reached a certain point, the soul is then consumed, and another is pulled before ascending. We know not the number of souls needed to be consumed in order for his desired ascendance. We cannot allow him to reach this state. We know not of what he is capable of, but we foresee it to be the end of all. There is no certainty in this assumption. However, he has ill intentions.
By the gods. Wolfram looked down at his feet as if he felt sweat beading on his face. Can Carmen be restored or ascend prior to the end of the Valkyrie?
The soul is not called Carmen. That is not her birth name or true name. I know not that is possible. It has only been seen one other time. It roamed for hundreds of years, past many winds, until the Sycamore came across it. No one witnessed this, but we felt its life source go out immediately. We do not know if the soul was saved or consumed.
Shit. Wait, her name's not Carmen?
Nay, Lily. The Noxicura calls its vessel this.
By the gods! I did not even know her name. The Valkyrie. Why does it appear to be haunting me? I have heard it's because you make eye contact with it, it mocks you.
Nay, they feed upon the souls of dabblers. It appears you are the only one in this wind.
Wolfram's face visibly drooped haggardly. This is not good. Is the Noxicura the cause of the random rips?
We know not.
Aye. Wolfram brushed his hand through his hair, then dropped it lazily as he shook his head. Nightmares. Why do you call yourself a nightmare?
We are the nightmares of you humans. We are created in what you call the in-between. The duller the dream, the duller the shadow. The lower ranks have no ability to ascend as they know nothing. Us middle ranks are aware and can make decisions, learn. We are created by humans who have experienced trauma, vivid dreams, as I have heard it called. The Sycamore are among the few throughout history who experience nothing but lucid dreams. They are always aware of their state of dreaming. They can control the nightmare, but this does not keep the human having the lucid dream from experiencing intense fear. The Sycamore take nearly the whole lifespan of a human to be created, piece by piece.
You mentioned you avoid the Sycamore. This must mean you know where one is?
Nay, if we sense one is nearby, we flee the area. I have been, what you call lucky, to have never stumbled across one while in a host. I have sensed them nearby, but not all hosts are able to be controlled. Some can, while certain humans cannot be controlled at all, such as my host. I cannot control him. I merely sit and watch.
So, there's not one near?
Nay.
Is the Valkyr near?
It has been since I arrived. It has been circling us, but cannot get through the threshold.
What threshold? The dead area around the facility? Do you know why it can't cross while you can?
It is not just a nightmare. It is a monster. I am not. I mean no harm.
So why does that circle kill certain animals?
I know not. The others, the dumber but still more intelligent than the other race, I've been talking that have attached to this building. They know not either. They only know that a group they call the government knows and placed it here. The race that died long ago. There is a new government that they speak of that is here today. They want to know. They wish to learn more and use it upon their own kind.
What? That's why they send only one person here at a time?
As they say, they do not wish to be known of their intentions. They have sent in many a member of their government, but they have all ceased just as the mammals.
If I may, Kyron began. The head scientist who accompanied me to the first facility did not drop dead. She entered and left unharmed.
Then this scientist does not mean harm. I know not why she works amongst the ill-intended, however. Perhaps the shadows here merely jest. It is difficult to say.
So that's what she meant during our conversation?
He is waking. Goodbye. I wish thee luck with your pursuits to end the Noxcura. Do not allow my host to be near Sycamara. I do not wish to cease, and I have helped you. Return the favor.
The Yugoth disappeared into black smoke as the withered strip returned back into Lucas. Lucas began stirring as his eyes returned to their normal light brown. He shook his head and looked at them in a dazed state.
What happened?
Boy, we have a lot to discuss. Wolfram sighed as he slumped back to the floor. Lucas looked at Kyron and then back to Wolfram.
Did I dabble?
Lucas asked hesitantly. Not quite, son.
So,
Lucas began as he looked down at his shoes.
I wonder why he never made his presence known to me. I mean, I would like to meet someone who's always been there with me, first person even.
Indeed, it would. He knew little about what you are and how unique you are. He stated that he simply knew. Not only that, but that shadow is over 1,000 years old. He knew a more than helpful amount of information. I've been wrong about so many things. I want to know how the Noxcura was able to pull that soul out of that last scientist on the recording, Kyron mentioned. Good point. We have learned even more, and yet we still don't have any leads on what to do. I have never felt a Sycamore, so I don't know where to even begin to search. Wolfram then looked to Lucas. Actually, Lucas, other than hearing shadows, can you feel them too?
Well, I'm not particularly sure what exactly would I feel.
If I feel one, it is almost a sensation of being watched but amplified. It's a specific feeling, and once you feel it, you never forget it. Perhaps we can go on a search for the Sycamore. We have to make sure that you are kept safe from it. Your Yugoth was kind enough to share valuable information with us. I feel we should protect him. Not only this, but it is possible you could die from it. I do not know, and neither did he. I suppose the best thing to do now is to move on to the next facility, Kyron advised. Did the shadows here not say that there was no third facility when Lucas first came?
That's right. Actually, or are they trying to lead us in the wrong direction?
Lucas peered at the ceiling.
Well, I guess that answers my question, along with the other. I could feel them grow angry.
Why would they try to do that, I wonder? We did not have enough time to ask, but I wondered if perhaps the Noxcura may have the ability to, maybe control the other links, the lower ones. Not necessarily a leader they serve, but as slaves. They have not a choice in the matter. That seems possible, Wolfram wondered. That seems possible. We must be careful about which ones we can trust, he added.
Right.
Emily? Kyron asked. Emily had kept a distance from Lucas after the incident and seemed more fearful of him than ever. Kyron still had trouble understanding how she, essentially a weapon, was afraid of a dead kid. If she wanted, she could slice him into pieces within seconds. However, Kyron felt a pang of pity for thinking negatively of her, as she was but a victim. She was still a young girl who had been tormented. Kyron approached Emily, who was sitting close to the large window wall, peering out. Her slender tail was wrapped around her legs, just as a cat does. He noticed an elegance about the way she sat peering out at something that she had not seen in so long. Her left ear turned back as she heard his footsteps but did not face him. She must have learned what each of our steps sound like, he assumed. Emily, we're departing at dawn. Her head lowered, as did her ears. What is it? I just... She said lowly. As she turned to face him, she had a single tear slide down her cheek. I don't think I should go. Why not? She shook her head lightly and looked back at the window. I just don't think it's a good idea. Kyron sat down next to her with a soft groan. Is it because of old Lucas over there? He asked as he pointed his thumb behind him. No. I can't get past my image. I'll be shot down immediately if I were to be seen. There's nowhere for me to go. No, you're wrong. There is a place for everyone on this earth. We simply just need to find it. And how do you figure that, Mr. Optimist? Only time will tell, he smiled. But I have faith in it. Be truthful, Kyron. Am I not a burden to you and your group? You really want the truth? I do. I think you are a great asset to the group. That and I relate to you in so many ways. There is more than what meets the eye. I mean, look at poor Lucas over there. He was saying earlier how it would be hard for him to find a date. He has a pretty cool personality. She remained silent. And no, I never said you were ugly. You are unique and I like that. You aren't the normal everyday female. You, inside, are interesting. She turned to him with a faint smile as her slits swelled slightly. Thank you. No, thank you for coming into our lives. We're a weirdo lot, but I think we're all pretty awesome if I do say so myself. Emily giggled and then turned to the two behind them. All right. If I am to leave, please let me know anytime. Never keep me if I'm unwanted. I'll leave without any resistance. Whatever, Kyron said as he got to his feet. That won't be necessary. Emily smiled as she got to her feet and made her way over to them and sat amongst them, with Lucas in her direct sight. Emily, have you heard about our discussion thus far? She nodded. Good. Have you any input? Well, I have a follow-up question, really. All right, let's hear it. Are there any other types of dabblers out there? Per se, like dabbling is the trunk of the tree and it branches out, or perhaps dabbling is a limb and there's something else that's the trunk? Wolfram furrowed his brow as he tilted his head. Actually, damn, I need my library. That will have to do tomorrow. What I at least remember is that there is something of the such mentioned in the scrolls that were lost in time. The information has been passed down through history by dabblers, word for word, of course. It could have been explained incorrectly, or much of its truth was never passed with the knowledge. I do somewhat recall some sort of... So, why do you ask? I wondered if perhaps Lucas was on another branch, or perhaps from the trunk itself? Wolfram raised his brows in astonishment. You may be onto something there, Emily, he said as he bounced his finger at her. Maybe even a rare part of the tree that's known to few. That would make sense, that even shadows don't know what he is. Maybe this is in fact how they started the zombie movies, Kyrie mentioned. Perhaps to tell as you had described the knowledge being lost along the way, so zombies are not mindless creatures that want to eat living flesh. They were of a specific breed or branch that allows them immortality to a degree, but with a price perhaps? You may be right there, Kyron. Perhaps they are so rare that no one knows of them anymore. They were eventually seen as a myth, and the stories of them died long ago. That was such an excellent point, Emily and Kyron.
I do want to mention again, though, he did have dark matter and acetine on him when I scanned him. What do you think that means? Dark matter is theoretically related to the event horizon of a black hole, right? So, acetine and dark matter? Emily inquired. Right, when we first found Lucas, I have a gun that scans materials and gives a breakdown of them. Those are pretty much the only things I found, in addition to radiation, which I assumed was from the acetine. The rest said unknown, but there were several of them. Interesting. Maybe the dark matter in theory slows down the degenerative properties on Lucas's body. But what of the acetine? It has an extremely short lifespan. How would it be present with the dark matter slowing process and the short lifespan of acetine? It sounds like a paradox to me, or just downright impossible. Here, let's scan him again to see what they were. I can't remember everything about it, honestly. Kyron grabbed his scanner from his bag and pointed it at Lucas. As before, the analysis process took longer than usual for him. Then it finally gave the final results, which turned out to be the exact same as before. He has been with us longer than 8 hours, which is the lifespan of acetine. Does his body keep creating it, or does the dark matter perhaps slow it down significantly, maybe to such a degree that it barely goes down? Such as 100 years equals 1 hour for it. That would mean that he could live up to 800 years if that's right, Kyron observed. Either way, I'm seeing it had scans showing degenerative properties. So it's like he has all the stuff breaking down, or it's frozen in the stasis, or nearly frozen. I don't think I understand how all these things are existing together. Not just that, but the fact that he has dark matter on him. We barely even understand it, Emily added. I don't believe we'll end up figuring out what he is this way, honestly. Perhaps we could turn in and call it a night. I'd like us all to journey back to the cabin in the morning to ensure Lucas and Emily can both be with us. With more eyes, more likely to find something useful along the way. Not only that, but I'm curious to see what my cabin has to say to Lucas. I don't know if it's such a good idea for you to even go right now. Remember what Lucas's Yukaroth said? The Vokran has been circling this facility. That means it senses you, and it will follow you if you leave. It will follow me when we journey to the third facility anyway. But we're backtracking to get your materials. I think it'd be best for you to stay put. We don't need you getting eaten. I think all of us have an important role here. Kyron saw a faint smirk on Emily's face. Fine, you have a point. What am I to do while you're gone? I'm not familiar with the place. There's some books here that you can read. Some are fictional, so they're not real, but they're just stories. Child's tales? Not necessarily. Stories are a large part of our culture. Sure, we have plenty of children's stories, but there's a lot for adults as well. I see, Wolfram said as he nodded. All right, I suppose you all set off at dawn since you're safe from the Vokran. I'll remain inside until you return. Right, I'm going to turn in, guys, Kyron said as he stood and stretched with a sigh. I'll see you all in the morning. All right, not all. Everyone bid their good nights and turned in for the night.